and particularly to ask questions. And we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and I'll run through all the questions I can find on chat, and we'll relay those to Ken and have a good old time. It is actually 7 o'clock now, so we can go ahead and I'll just start some of my remarks and use up a few minutes while people continue to join us. And so I'll just start by saying welcome everybody to our last chapter presentation for the season. We'll take the summer off, as a lot of chapters do, and we'll get back together again in September. Right now, our current plan is to continue doing presentations by Zoom in September, but the situation seems to be changing very rapidly, and it's a little hard to predict what kind of gathering ability we will have then. So we may actually be back to live presentations by the fall, but we will let you know when we get that all figured out. Right now, we're currently planning for the fall presentations to be via Zoom. So again, use the chat function if you want to have a side conversation or ask questions of me or of Ken, our guest speaker tonight. We'll have a Q&A at the end after his presentation, and the chat is a great way to do that. I don't see Shannon with us, but I'll just mention that the board at our last meeting last month welcomed a new member to the board of directors for the Mendocino Coast Audubon Society, and that's Shannon, who many of you know. And Shannon is already the new conservation director, and is already outlining an ambitious agenda, and we have quite a bit of activity in mind. I think you're going to see the Mendocino Coast Audubon Society maybe get a little more active in conservation matters. There seem to be a few more of them popping up recently, as you've no doubt noticed. And so the board is pretty careful about weighing how we want to join in on a lot of these issues, and we encourage you your input in that as well. So if there are local issues that you think Mendocino Coast Audubon Society either ought to weigh in on or ought to keep our beaks out of, either way, let us know. You can email me, audubon@mcn.org, or get in touch with us through our Facebook page. Any other method will do, but we would sure love to hear from members about what they think we ought to be doing, because the board is pretty careful about getting involved in things. So that's my request for that kind of help. And also, we can always use more board members. We have a great board right now. We have 9 members. We have room for at least one more, or actually I think 2 more, and before we get too unwieldy. And more voices are always welcome, and it's great fun. It's a great bunch of people to work with, and there's plenty to do. So if you're looking for a way to get involved, this is a great one. We have had some interesting bird sightings recently, and feel free to chime in on the chat with anything you've seen lately, but there have been some good reports on Mendo birds, that breeding plumage white-faced ibis. I didn't get to see it, but stopped off up at Virgin Creek, and Shannon got some fantastic photographs of it. And I think some of you have been seeing the wave of redneck phalaropes that are currently moving up the coast. Most of them are out on the ocean. I got to see them when I was out fishing a couple of days ago, but a few of them have been getting blown in to shore by the wind. And so we've gotten some great looks at breeding plumage redneck phalaropes, which are always a great sight. That's a real treat. And our guest will talk a little bit about some of the sounds you're hearing at night lately. This is the season for these little owls to start calling. So if you haven't been out at night listening to the woods, this is a great time to do it. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and introduce tonight's guest, and we'll go ahead and start the presentation. I don't see anything on the chat, so I'll just jump into it. Tonight, we're very, very pleased to welcome to the Mendocino coast from the California foothills, Ken Sobon, who is the Vice President of Altacal Audubon, which is the chapter over in the Gold Rush country, right? Ken, the Sierra foothills.
County, so north of that. So Chico, I live in Chico.
Yeah, there you go. And he's also the Northern California representative to the California State Audubon Board of Directors. And so that's a role that David Jensen filled for many years and was kind of our conduit to the state organization. And Ken has now stepped into that and has been very communicative. I really appreciate that, Ken. He's also, more to the point for tonight, the director of the Northern Saw-whet Owl Research and Education Project. And I will leave it to him to tell us exactly what that involves. But these are one of my favorite birds. I just love these little guys. So I'm really looking forward to Ken's presentation tonight. Will you please welcome Ken Sobon?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. My pleasure to be able to share with you. I know there's a lot of cameras that are turned off, and I need a couple cameras on. It's, as a teacher, it's very hard for me to teach to a word. So if a couple of you can turn your cameras on, maybe a couple more, I appreciate it. At least I can see some, feedback, so I know if things aren't working or whatever. So I appreciate those that are turning their cameras on. So thank you. So yes, I've been working with Saw-whet Owls for 5-10 years. I've been the director of the Saw-whet Owl study in Butte County but coming up on 5 years. And I'm now, I was subpermitted under Don Garcia. So some of you may know Don. And then now I have completely taken over. Don's moved away, and I'm now the license bander, and I have several other people that I have subpermitted also. So that they're helping me out. So I'm just going to go ahead and start here, and we'll talk about our program. Let me share my screen with you, and then push play. Okay, so we've got same view. You've got the picture of the owl and no notes, correct? Okay, thumbs up. Good. Okay, so excellent. So here's a great picture of a Northern Saw-whet Owl. They're quite common, actually. They're considered that they are the most plentiful owl in North America. So there's more saw-whets than great horns or any other burrowing owls. And it kind of makes sense when we think about when we do our migration study. We might have 17 in one night just at our one location. And we have a pair in the 3,000 acre reserve. We have a pair of just 2 great horned owls. So they are most plentiful, but they're rarely seen. They're very elusive. They're cavity nesters, but not roosters. So they'll nest in a cavity, but they're so cryptic, and they're just so well camouflaged. They'll find a little place in the tree, and for the most part go undetected. Now, if you wanted to find one, what I would look for is some jays or other birds mobbing a tree. So if you see birds that are making a lot of racket, mobbing a tree, go look and see what they're mobbing, and it might be a saw-whet owl. So Saw-whet Owls made the news, and I got a bunch of emails and phone calls and direct messages about this little guy. Found Rockefeller Center. It was in the Christmas tree, and just decided not to move. And when they got to New York City, then they discovered this little guy and his little saw-whet owl. So here is the range of the saw-whet owls. They pretty much stop at the Mexico border. Some of them are in some of the mountains in Mexico, but there is another population of owls that's pretty closely related to saw-whets, and there's the Mexican relative of them. So it is the most frequently banded owl. in North America. Our average age of encounter is about 1.9 years. The longevity record is 9 years, 5 months. And they breed in northern forest, upper Cascades, Sierras, and even in the coastal range. You might be hearing saw-whets now or in the near future. I'm going to play this video. One thing that I've noticed is that the videos on Zoom will be jerky, but hopefully the audio will be clear. So you don't get a lot of frames. So let's play this and maybe you can hear the call. Watch carefully. So I don't know if you saw that blink, but it was a pretty precious thing. And they do have that call. It's like a whistle. And you might be hearing that right now if you live in more of a rural area. So here's a saw-whet on her nest, and look at all the cache of voles in this one nest. Voles and then mice too. So I mean, I'm counting 6+ in there. She's on the eggs right now. Males, typically, the male is the one that's singing winter and spring. The females choose the nest cavity, and the males will protect their nest cavity, but then the female will select for them. They're typically monogamous. But not always. These owls have been known to double clutch and even sometimes triple clutch. So what that means is one female might select a male in a lower elevation, and a few months later, another one in an upper elevation, and then a few months later. So she might be breeding all winter. So they have some documentation of a triple clutch with 3 different males. But that's very atypical, and they normally it's monogamous. So 5 to 6 eggs. The male does the hunting. When she's on the eggs, the male will bring, and the male is doing a good job for this female, bringing lots. Incubation 6 to 8 weeks, and incubation about 3 to 4, and then 4 or so for fledge. So 6 to 8 weeks from laying to fledging, where they fly. Their sizes of these guys. Well, if you can see the size difference in these on the hand, some of them are a little bit bigger than a tennis ball if they're all scrunched up, and some of them get much bigger. The males are smaller than the females, and that's called reverse dimorphism. So di to morph shape. The females in this species are larger than the males, and up to 50%. So we can see the length, the weight, 65 to 151. I think my heaviest female that I caught was maybe 109 grams. But maybe on the breeding area where she's getting a lot of food, they might get that heavy, but I've never seen them over 110 grams. What do they eat? Well, they really like deer mice, voles. Here's a picture of a vole down in the bottom. That's one of their favorite foods. That's a big female picture on the left-hand side of the screen, and their claws are really well designed for grasping. They don't just hold on to their prey. They actually cross their talons and lock in on their prey. So it's not just like this, but they lock in. And I've actually had that happen on my finger. Some scrappy females, and this was a scrappy female, sometimes they'll do that and they'll kind of cross their talons over. And that's why it's great to have someone that helps you. Okay, just open up the talons so you can get your finger out of there. They tend to go in a four-year boom and bust cycle. And it corresponds to the amount of food in the field, whether there's seeds that feed the rodents, but we generally see a 4-year boom and bust cycle. Last year, we were basically almost at bust, one of our lowest. So next year we're due to have a boom year. Several different calls. The name of saw-whets, there's several theories. We don't know for sure why they're called saw-whet. One theory is a wet saw, the sharpening, although it doesn't really sound like it. Some of the chirps and wails and barks may sound like that. And then there's another theory of a French word, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, which sounds similar to saw-whet. So let's play some of the different calls that you might hear. So what we heard there was the male call starting off, and that's his broadcast call, and says, starting all over again. It should stop in a second. So the male call is his broadcast call. He's saying, I'm here, ladies, I've got a cavity, or maybe I'm just here, maybe not necessarily on a cavity. You heard some of the barks and chirps and wails, banshees. There's a banshee call that just has this sound. And then we heard some female solicitation call here. So why do we do what we do? Well, with climate change, the range at which they're breeding is shrinking. So they're getting forced to breed higher up and higher up in the mountains in cooler climates. So as it gets warmer, the owls are going to be moving north, and they're going to kind of get squeezed between the boreal owl, which is kind of in that dark green area. So we need to gain as much data as we can about these guys, know where they breed, see if we can protect habitat, and whether is it nesting boxes they need or whatever they need, so we can protect these just terrific little owls. So we're part of a group called Project OwlNet, and there's 120, 200, I don't know the exact number. We could count all the red dots there, but there's more participants in the East Coast, as you can see, than in the West Coast. And these are banding stations. So we all use the same methods, and it is unified that we're measuring for this. We measure the wing chord in this way. We measure mass this way. We age it this way. So it is a unified standard practice, which makes the data collection a lot more accurate. So the migration of these owls. So these owls will migrate in the fall, and they come through at least our area, and we can see in Northern California, that little red dot here in the center of Northern California. That's our station. There was a station in Mendocino. That one is closed, so that should be yellow now. But I have a colleague who's opened up a station in Blue Lakes, so just north of you, or Blue Lake. She's doing some experimenting. But we know that these owls will come through with the Sierras in the fall. So early October to November, and mid-November, and we're already starting, just in our 15 years, we're starting to see them arrive a little bit earlier. We don't know if it's climate change. Having just 15 years of data is not enough. So we need many more years data to really see if there is a trend, but we are starting to see that they are coming a few days earlier. We never used to go out before October 15th, but I've had a few come in early October, in the first week of October. So now we're starting, our first date was October 15th. Now we're starting a week earlier, and we're seeing a few trickle in. So migration. Now these guys don't follow the Pacific flyway like a waterfowl. They're pretty transient. They're opportunists. They kind of move to where there's prey. They move, so they move all around. So one mitochondrial DNA study of these owls have found that there's really no significant difference between the West Coast owls and the East Coast. There's not enough. So what that's telling us is because they're very genetically similar, that there's intermixing. And we'll talk about, we've captured a few owls from other stations. One was from Iowa, and I'll talk about this more later. One is from Montana. So, you know, from the middle part of the country all the way. So there is this mixing. Now, where do we do the study? Well, we do the study at the Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve. And we've got a great location. Dawn, when she was selecting this location, tried many spots, and this one is pretty good. If you can look at that picture, and you can see, you can't really see, but at the top of the canyon, it's a little bit white there, and that's Mount Lassen, actually. So what happens is the owls will be moving south. They hit this canyon, and it kind of acts like a funnel, and they fly down down the canyon. I play a broadcast, and that brings them down. So Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve is part of Chico State University. It's a partnership that we have with them. We have several stations. Owl 1 has been completely closed. We have Owl 2 and 3 and 4. Owl 3, if you've ever been to the reserve, is below the barn. And this is really our most productive location. Sometimes we'll band in Owl 2. And that's only if we see like a fox moving around the nets. So just to avoid, we move. It's only, you know, a couple hundred yards, you know, maybe maybe 1,000 yards away, but it's enough to not have issues with the fox. Let me skip this here. So here's our net array. So what we do is, as I mentioned, we have a collar, and the collar is pretty loud. It's over 100 decibels. So it's pretty loud. And these owls that are flying way up, it pulls them down. When we went to a different collar and were able to get that volume up, we saw our numbers really shoot up. So that's why we need to do this longer, because we've had the collar for about 7 years, 8 years, and we don't have enough data to really see a trend yet. So we have the collar, and you can see in that picture, it's like a little ballpoint pen, blue, and then 4 nets. And they come to investigate the net, the call, and they get caught in the net. And then we take them out, put them in little bags, and then go up to the table to study them and take our measurements. Here's some of the equipment that we use. Some banding pliers, a gauge for seeing really how big the leg is to see what kind of band, a black light, and I'll talk about why we use that, a wing gauge, and then a scale and a cup. So there is a little video that I will show you with that. So I'm going to skip this little video here. So here I've got pliers in my hand. I'm putting a band on the leg and showing some volunteers, some observers, the whole project, what we're doing. And then there's the bands. Okay, so these bands are unique. So they're unlike any other band. That is a unique number for Saw-whet or for any band. So it's unique. These are a 4 short. So they're a shorter band because Saw-whets, their tarsus is a little bit shorter on their wrist, basically. Their foot, so above their ankle, is a little bit shorter. So we got a shorter band. And then if you ever find a band, there's information where to call it in, that you can report it, and that's real important. So ornithologists, people, us that studying birds, when we get information of someone that has captured a band, well, too bad if it's dead or alive, that's real important for us to see these migration trends, these habits that they're doing. So that's a good thing. So band sizes, we use several different band sizes. We do get Western Screech owls, and those are our full-time residents, and those guys stay. They're all year round, but we do capture a few of them. So this video should work here. So let me play this little video. You should hear the audio well, and then the video will be a little jerky, but I think you'll be able to get some information. So now that it's dark, you can really see the pockets. that the bird will fall into. And you can also hear our caller. So up here in the distance, you can see the caller. That's playing the call from male Northern Saw-whet Owl. And that lures the owls into these nets. So once they're in the net, we bring them, put them in nice little cute bags, and we haul them up to the table, to the station, and we collect data. So the data that we collect, and this is ubiquitous amongst all the saw-whet net stations, the band number, the species, age, sex, wing chord, and the wing chord is basically the wrist. I'll be talking about that. Tail bars, and then if you look to the right, those are the molt. That tells us how old the owl is, and we're going to go over the molt and how we tell how old it is. So of that data, the first thing that we do is we want to find out whether it's a male or a female. So we sex them. Now, we use 2 measurements to sex the Northern Saw-whet Owl, and every bird is a little bit different. So it's not the same. So some birds have molts that they shed or molt their feathers the same way saw-whets, but not all. So this is the technique for saw-whets. So to sex a bird, we use what's called the wing chord. And if you look at the picture, basically it's where we're measuring, and it's from the wrist to the tips of the feathers. So we do a wing chord, and then we measure its mass. So if you look at this picture here, so if you look at the big white vertical graphic there, so like 130. So if the wing chord of the owl is 130 millimeters, and we move across to the right, if it's less than 82 grams with that wing, it will be a male. If it's 83, greater than 83, it'll be unknown. And greater than 89, greater than 90, it'll be a female. So we use this chart every owl. We look at its wing, we look at its mass, and then we say, okay, it's a male, female, or it's unknown. Uniform, do we have any unknowns? Sex, yeah, those are all females, okay. So what we do get is more females. We get about 8 to 9 females for every male. Couple theories of why. One is that the male stays on territory, is protecting his cavity. So we'll stay on territory and the females will migrate. And there's, that's probably the best theory that we know of. Now, how do we figure out how old they are? Well, to age them, we use their feathers and their flight feathers. So what we do is we look for a molt limit, how they molt or replace their feathers. So when we look at the wing, we can see that there are P10, which is primary flight feather, to P1. Okay, so you can see that there's a little gap there. So when we're counting, we'll go P10, 9, 8, 7, 6 to P1. And then secondary flight feathers, so S1 to the body to S13. Okay, so that's just reviewing the flight feathers. Okay, so when a bird hatches, so if it's a newly hatched bird, a bird that hatched during the summer and we catch it in the fall, its flight feathers will be all the same age. Okay, so when we look at the picture, those are all fresh feathers. Okay, those are all fresh. And you'll be able to tell when we compare them to the other pictures. But what we look for fresh is we look for the darkness of the rachis, that kind of the quill part. And that's one of the darkness, and then the color, and you'll be able to see. So if the feathers are all uniform, then that's a hatchier bird. That bird is less than a year old, probably a few months old. And most of the birds that we do get are hatchiers. Now we have a little magic trick. And this trick, we use the black light, and you saw it in that one picture, is we use a black light to illuminate the underside of the wing. If we're unsure and we just want to confirm for sure, they have a chemical called porphyrin in their feathers, and it oxidizes over time. So it becomes less, it illuminates less, And so when we shine the black light on the underside of the wing, we can see, oh, that's a hatch here. And you can see that these are all pretty uniform. Now, you'll be able to see in the next couple slides how it's different. Okay, so a hatch year bird that was born in the summer, the feathers are all the same. Now, a second year or an after hatch year, what they do is they molt the outer wingtips. So the feathers, and that kind of makes sense. Those are the feathers that are scratching against trees or whatever as they're flying in. So they replace those tips, and they replace the ones closest to the body. So if we see a bird that has fresh feathers on the outside, fresh feathers on the inside, we'll know that that is a second year, and old feathers in the middle. So you can see the O for the older feathers, and you can kind of see a difference with that picture. The fresher are darker. That rachis is a little bit different color and more black rather than a brown. So if it's all the same, it's a hatch year. If there's fresh on the outside, fresh on the inside, it's a second year. And then let's look at this. So look at the difference. So you can see how it illuminates differently. We know, boy, that is a hatch or a second year bird, because look at it, it's fresh on the tips, old in the center, and then it'll be fresh near the body. So that's what we're calling a second year bird. Now, after that, after second year or a third year bird, that's pretty much where we stop, where we've reached the limit, because at this point they molt as needed. So if a feather is damaged, or we can see a damaged feather right in the center, right above that V, there's a damaged feather, so that will probably fall out, and they'll molt that. So we're really stuck with an after second year. It could be a third year, but it could be a ninth year too. We don't know. So unless we know for sure, because it's been captured, we're going to call that an after second year bird. So that's where we stop basically for age. And so here we have 3 generations of feathers. We've got old, fresh, and very old. And if you look at the VO, look at it, it's very kind of rufous, reddish brown, as opposed to a more gray and then a dark black. Okay. So, and then look at this. So we can see fresh and old here with the underside. So if we don't have that uniform, like if that one feather in the middle wasn't there, I'd call that a second year bird. But because that one feather is fresh, we're calling that an after second year. Okay, make sense? Okay, so we got a little video clip that I'm going to show you.
So here are the bands. Now, when it's time to open up a band, what I do is I line up that little slice with the pliers here, and then I open it up, put the string aside, and then I put the band in the pliers like this.
Now there's an owl in that little bag there. Okay, so there's an owl in that little bag that we brought up. Now, why do we put a band? Well, so if they're recaptured, that way we can identify them. So putting that band, or in England, they call it ringing. So instead of banding in America, we call it banding. And in Europe, they call it ringing, or ringing birds. Okay, so got another little video clip here of the process. So we got this owl in the bag. I brought it up from the net. I prepare the band, and then I'm going to pull them out.
Okay, so I've got an owl in the bag here. So I'm going to feel through the bag, just if I can see which way he's facing. It looks like so he's facing this way. His eyes are looking. And that's where his bill is. So I'm going to come in behind him and then hold him in what we call the bander's grip. So I'm holding the wings down. And I'm going to slide him out. And there, right there. So, sweet little guy. The Northern Saw-whet Owl. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a band on his leg. So I've already got the band in the pliers. So hold it with these small pinkies. And then I just close a little bit. And then roll it so we don't get feathers stuck in there. And then I open it up. You can see a few feathers in here. So then I just roll it.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
The gauge underneath the wing through here. And then I come at it one more time, different angle with the pliers, and close it up completely. Okay, so now it's closed completely. So the next thing I'm going to do, yep, that looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get its wing cord. So I'm going to get the measurement of the wing from basically the wrist to the tip of the wing. Mosquito here. So I put the gauge underneath the wing, and I elevate it and I lift it up, tuck it here. I lift it up so it's not laying flat. I want to keep a natural curve. So it looks like it's about 140. Okay. So the wing cord is 140. I look at its tail, and it looks like there are 3 bars of feathers on the tail. So 3 tail bars. And then I'll look and see the age of the feathers. And this looks like it's a hatch year to me, that they're all the same color and same age. Well, these could be fresh. So what I'll do is I will look with a black light. And sometimes it's a little bit harder. So I'm going to protect its eyes so it can't, doesn't damage it, but I'm going to look. Yeah, and the feathers are all the same color. So it's a hatch year bird. That was right. And there's the color underneath the wing. It's called porphyrin. The chemical in the wing that will kind of oxidize in age. So he's a hatch year because his feathers are all the same age. It was a little bit hard to tell here and here. These look really fresh, but looks like it's a hatch year. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weigh him. Put him in the cup here. The scale is zeroed out. I tuck its wings in here. I'm going to hold its legs just to keep them calm. And 82.9. So it's kind of light. The range is from about 70 to like 105, 75 to 105. And if you can zoom in on his face, you can kind of see, especially if I don't put quite so much light in there. Beautiful colors. And they're a magnificent creature. The Northern Saw-whet Owl. Sometimes when they're really agitated, we'll pet them, and that'll kind of calm them down. But you can see he's not stressed out. He's pretty calm, just letting us do what we need to do. So this is a Northern Saw-whet Owl.
So what I've, as you saw, number one priority is the safety of these animals. We do not want to hurt one of these animals. So in the close to 1,200 owls that we've banded, we've only had 1 injured, and we've not had any mortalities. The injured one went to an animal rehab. He was just tangled in the net a little bit too much. He went to animal rehab, and then a month later, he was released and did fine. So when we look at, so safety is the most important thing for us. So I don't want him agitated. We keep it calm. I don't like a big group there because it stresses the animal out. I like to keep a smaller group. And especially when the animals are out, then we, just whisper voices, no flash photography. So here's our years of study from 2005 to 2020. Now we can see that there's some patterns and trend. And one of the things that you might see is the difference between the blue and the kind of the gray. So the blue is our hatch year. And some years we get more hatch year than anything else. And we have this year's 2020, we have a lot of hatch year birds and less, I'm sorry, we have less hatch year. After hatch year are the darker. I switched that. So the after hatch year are the darker blue, and then the hatch year. So this year we have more after hatch year. Some years, like look at 2017, look at all those hatch years. Look at 2010 and 2006. So those are some big years. Right now, if we look at this trend, we had more nights out in 2020. But what is important is to look at this line, because this line, not the actual number, because we actually had more nights out this year because the weather was great. So we didn't have any rained out nights, or maybe one. So we were out more collection, but we look at that line represents number of owls captured per 100 hours, net hours. So that's every net, there's 4 nets. And you know, when that's 4 hours, that's 4 net hours in 1 hour. So that's how we would study it. So in 1 hour, there'd be 4 nets, so there'd be 4 net hours. So this year was a low year, even though we had good numbers over 100. But next year, we're looking for a big bumper year like 2017. So if we look at these numbers too, the arrow that's pointing at hours captured and 100 of net hours. So this is just some of the data, you know, number of nights. We had 34 nights this year. We look at 2014, we were only out 12 nights. So, okay, so why do we do this? Well, we want to, we definitely want to capture someone else's owl, an owl that someone else has banded. And we've had 3 of those. So we've captured 3 owls that have been banded at a different location. So our first one was in 2011, and that was banded in Montana. And so we can see the red arrow in the center, the Bitterroot Valley. That owl only took 35 days to fly to us. So he was banded in Montana, hung out in Montana, went to Idaho and maybe Oregon or maybe Nevada, who knows, and just bebopped around for 35 days and then came to us. So kind of a westerly, kind of southwesterly. The next owl was Iowa in 2013. So we can see right in the center, that red arrow in the center. That owl was banded in 2013, or actually the year before. So probably it nested in Canada, came down to Iowa for the fall, and then went back up and then maybe came west to us. So the following year, we captured it. And then we've had one bird that from 2018, and that was banded 2 years prior at the white arrow in the upper left-hand corner. So in British Columbia. So Cobble Hill, British Columbia is stationed there. Now we have 2 of our owls being captured somewhere else. So both of those owls were captured by Rocky Point Bird Observatory, and those were captured in 2018. And they have 2 stations right at the tip of the island there. So all the owls come and they kind of get funneled, and they go across. Songbirds, owls fly across the Juan de Fuca Strait. And so they've got songbird stations and owl stations there. And they got 2 of our owls that 1 year. So from that bumper year of 2017, birds that were banded by us, 2017, it came to them the next year. So we were real thrilled to get those because it's, you know, one of the hypotheses was that these owls are kind of following, you know, Pacific Flyway. Now, not all of them, but some are tending, our hypothesis is kind of confirmed because some are tending to follow that north-south route. Not all, but some are. One of my colleagues who's opening up a station in Blue Lakes near Eureka, she did a lot of banding in in the East Coast, or yeah, in the East Coast. And she says, you know, these Western owls, they're a lot more red. Now, even though genetically there's not a lot of difference, it was just her anecdotal observations that the owls that we're getting have a little bit more reddish color than she experienced in the East. So if you ever find an owl or a bird that has a band, turn it in and they'll give you this little certificate. So that's real important. Now, not only do I work with owls or study migratory owls, I'm looking for owls that are nesting, and I've placed 20 boxes, 15 in the reserve and 5 more up in the Plumas National Forest. And we've placed those trying to see where they're nesting. Do we have nesting owls in the Sierras, in the Cascades? Now, if you do, let me know. If you have a nest box up, a kestrel box works just fine. If you ever have a saw-whet nesting there, give me a call. I'll drive to Mendocino and band it for you, because I'd love to get some data of some newly hatched owls. So you can find me Altacal. But we have not had any nesting saw-whets. We have had nesting screech owls. So there's a Western screech owl there. And so you can see the mama, her head is looking up. She's looking up, and then the baby. Now this owl, this mama owl, we've banded 4 years in a row. She has used the same box 4 years in a row. And it was just this one box that's been used. We've had another owl in Paradise use a box, and I've had some other boxes used in Concow, but on the reserve, there's just this one box. So these owls are the right age to band. And if we look here, they're not developed enough that we can put a band on their leg. These are old enough that we can put a band on their leg. They're actually bigger than the female by fluff, and sometimes they're a little bit heavier than the females. If there's a lot of food, they really get stuffed. Now, last year was our low year, right? Our bust year, not our bumper year. And if we look at some of the other boxes, yeah, and here we can see the vole. That's from a prior year. The vole, the food in there, and there was some other deer mice and things like that. Last year, there weren't any rodents cached in the box, only feathers. And the feathers I'm thinking were feathers from spotted towhee, maybe California towhee. So the mama was able to fledge her 3 babies, but she was feeding them birds rather than mammals, and which is pretty fascinating. Those towhees will roost in the bushes. She was going through the bushes getting birds to feed her babies. Now, sometimes we get squirrels. So here we've got they're not northern flying squirrel, they are a Humboldt flying squirrel. So we get the Humboldt flying squirrel in California. And I opened up one of these nest boxes to see, and out jumped this squirrel, and it startled me. So what we can see in the picture, you can see, follow the pole down towards the tree, and you can see my hand, and it's a GoPro camera on a big pole, and I'm basically holding it and taking a picture at the backside. I'm on the other side of the tree, so I can't see this squirrel, but I found it with the camera and then looking at my phone as a screen, and I was able to take a picture of it. You can see the little flaps of skin there. So it's always fun catching flying squirrels, or at least the first couple times it was fun, but now it's not fun because they tend to get themselves tangled. They usually chew their way out. So if we get there quickly, we can untangle them. If not, they'll pretty much shred the net, and the nets are expensive. So here's a video. There's a little baby one. That was my first flying squirrel. And then we got one 2 years ago, none last year, but we usually get a couple a year. So here's a little video of me untangling the squirrel. Be sure you watch the end of the video. It's not really that tangled. It's just kind of holding on. So I'm going to kind of hold it out like a cat's cradle.
Come on, come through.
But it's on the
Come-
side.
Yeah, but I think you should come through.
Just his hips were through. But you can really see the flaps of skin.
Yeah, maybe if you spread it out, you can get it.
Now watch this. Boing, boing, boing. Yeah, they don't run like a regular squirrel would. They have to hop because their legs are attached there. So this is a nest of a flying squirrel, the top right, left, and then we get ash-throated flycatchers, and sometimes we'll get bats, pallid bats. We get those. You know, as I mentioned, I don't really like catching mammals because they bite hard. We've got gloves. You can see one of those little holes in my golf gloves. I got bit through one of those holes. It just happened to do it, and I had to get rabies shots, and that's not fun. So now I'm covered if I ever get bit again, but it was painful. Those shots were the worst. I mean, I've broken arms, and the rabies shots were the worst, so we don't want that. But these pallid bats, pale means pallid, so they're pale bellies. They love those Jerusalem crickets. That's one of their favorite foods. So they'll be grabbing these crickets off the ground. Sometimes they'll end up on the ground and they'll climb up a tree and then take off. Because bats don't have the ability to take off from the ground. They need to climb a tree, take off, and then coast down. So this video is a little dark, but look at this video on the right. So you can see the bat that was released kind of scurried himself up and then took off. Last year, we got a ringtail cat. Now, we didn't capture them, but we heard it was kind of a slower night. So we heard some turkeys making some noises in the trees near the station. We went over with our lights and found a ringtail cat. So you can see in the picture of the ringtail cat. And then not in the net, but it was fun to see. You can see the video of the cat scurrying up the tree. Pretty rare to see those, and it was a treat to be able to capture them on camera. So every owl looks a little bit different. There's no two owls that look alike, especially because I've seen so many. We can see there's one of my assistants petting this one, and it's just really just so relaxed. And the other one in the middle is a little cross-eyed. The other one looks a little fiery. So some are fiery, some are calm, some are kind of dopey.
Just wake up, buddy.
So it was loving that. So a couple of my assistants, people that have volunteered for me. Last year, I wasn't able to, we only had 4 people because of COVID, but we were able to band, but 2 licensed bander and then 1 person and 1 assistant. But we were able to, no one got sick, so we were able to still continue the study. So I was real happy about that. And this is what saw-whet babies look like. They're much cuter than, I didn't take this picture, but they're much cuter than Screeches, in my opinion. So if you ever have a saw-whet nesting on your property, you know of one, let me know. I'll make the 4-hour drive with my ladder, with my equipment, and we'd love to put some bands on there and study it. So if you'd like to get a hold of me, that's my email address. You can reach me. You can find me on the Altacal website also. And I am taking, I do take volunteers. And so occasional volunteer, especially during banding season. If something that's, people wanted to do a little field trip during banding season, someone from your group, you obviously have to get a hotel room, but that's available also. So we have a few questions in the chat. And if you have some questions, how do you tell their age? So we use that with the wing molt. I can repeat that if you'd like, but let me know. In boxes on the coast. Yep. Well, they will nest in boxes. They prefer cavities, but they have been known to use nest boxes. Specs, yeah. For the nest boxes, it's called nestwatch.org. NESTWATCH, right? Nestwatch.org. you type in the bird that you're looking for, bluebird, saw-whet, whatever, cavity nesters, and it'll give you the specs. It'll tell you where to place it, and when to place it, when they nest. So that's a great place if you want to build nest boxes. One thing that I found is that I think the placements are for the East Coast because the storms come in a different direction. I think they have us place them in the wrong direction, have it placed towards the storm. So open towards, our storms come from generally from the south, southwest, and they want you to place it that way. And I think it's East Coast. So you might have to experiment with your placing on the tree. But nestwatch.org is a great place to get specs for the box. How do you keep house sparrows? Placement, size of the boxes. Sometimes you have to just deal with the house sparrows. If you see house sparrows, you can, using it during the day. One thing you could do is just be real diligent. Close it up at the day, open it up at night, because they're not going to be looking, scouting during the day. They'll be scouting at the night. So you could make a little flap, but you just got to remember every day to close it. Adorable babies. Bands made out of aluminum. Raptor bands are made of, some are stainless steel. And I do have for Screech owls, they're a little bit bigger, and there's a locking band. So it's like a little flap that goes around, and that's stainless steel. They're much harder to apply. It takes more practice, but those are a stainless steel band, but very light, doesn't affect them. I don't know of any nesting in the coast, so that's why I need you to let me know. So if you find any nesting in the coast, please let me know. I'll come and take a look, or I'll send my colleague Macy, who's a little bit north, well, a couple hours north. She might come down. Territory size of nesting pair. That's a great question. I don't know the exact number. I know sometimes having 2 nest boxes in an area for some owls, it helps them because there's more than one. So 2 nest boxes within a nearer, because sometimes the male will stay in one, the female will stay on the other. But I don't know the exact size of the territory. The placements, the Nest Watch does give that. I think maybe 1 kilometer, but I'm not exactly sure. Yes, the Mexican bird is a subspecies, different, separate. And then, do they use, well, if they use up the food resources, then they will move on. Yeah, then they move on, their territories would grow. There's not a lot of density. They don't nest that closely, not like a robin or wood, or they definitely breed. Yeah, you hear them calling. So yeah, please let me know. I'd love to get my little hands on one of these saw-whets. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about these guys. I love them. I teach science during the day for middle school kids, and during the fall especially, I get to work with these guys, and so it's quite a treat. So don't see any other questions. If you didn't want to type it in, if you want to, I don't know what your protocol is, but you could probably unmute it for a second if you have any questions. Anyone have any other
If anybody
questions?
else has a question, go ahead and chime in. I think that was a great presentation, Ken. Thanks a million for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was fascinated to see the pictures of the one in what looked like a nest box, because we did a workshop here a couple of years ago and built some bluebird and chickadee boxes and put them up, and it was astonishing to me to see how quickly they were put to use.
Yeah.
And I've got one that I put up for a kestrel that did not get used, and sounds like maybe I can repurpose that and move it down into the trees a little further.
Yeah.
What kind of habitat is best for nesting? They presumably nest in the deep woods.
Yeah, I would put it in some cover, not in the open like a kestrel. But the box is essentially the same. I think it's the same hole size.
Oh, really? That surprised me.
Yeah, I've got someone in Concal called me because he had some screech owls that were nesting, and he got a piece of bark. He basically built a nest box out of some cedar, some curved cedar bark. And the nest box was narrow. I mean, it was a little bit wider, but it was very narrow. And there was 5 screech owls just jam-packed in this small cavity, maybe like a loaf of bread, like Wonder Bread, you know, that old style, a little bit taller, maybe a little bit wider, but 5 of them jammed in that. So they'll just fledge a little bit early. You know, if you ever find the owls or any birds, a little side note, it's best not to necessarily even take it to a rescue. If anything, put it up on a branch or up in a tree, because owls they'll be like tree hoppers or branch hoppers. So they'll fledge early, then they'll get onto a branch, and then the mama will feed them from the branch. They'll find some covers. They'll stay there for another week, especially if it's getting too hot, or if too hot in the box, or too cramped. They'll continue even before they have their flight feathers. So they'll stay for a week up on a branch. I have seen that. So let's see if any other questions.
Yeah, that's a common problem with the wildlife rescue centers, is getting young owls that jumped out of the nest, and
Yeah.
people thought they were abandoned. Of course, they're not. They will sometimes fall out and land on the ground, and you can find these guys. They can't fly; they're just walking around on the
Right.
ground.
Yeah.
You just leave them alone. They can climb trees.
Yep,
They use
they sure can.
the bills, and they'll
Yeah.
climb right back up and find a branch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so iBird says they definitely breed. Yeah, they're year round. So the colleague that I was talking about, Macy, she is trying to do a year round study. So she's banding in all seasons and trying to find, see if there's some patterns on the coast, because it's unstudied for that. Well, it's studied, but not focused just on saw-whets. There's other people that do band in saw-whets, but not if you're, what are they doing? So it's the most plentiful, but there's so much we don't know about these guys.
Yeah.
Where are they coming? I don't know where any of my owls were born. We don't know for sure. We took some feather samples, just a little tip of the feather, and they're doing a radioactive isotope analysis of that. Someone's doing his PhD thesis on it, but we're still waiting for the information, and that'll tell us where that owl was born, year 1, year 2, because we're different feather age. So the hatch year feathers, the 2nd year and the 3rd year. So that'll give us 3 years where that owl was with the radioactive isotopes. I don't remember exactly what it is. I think they're oxygen, radioactive oxygen isotopes. Yeah, because of water. Yeah, because where they're drinking water, where are they getting that? Where are they getting animals? So, other questions? Well, good.
Just another observation, and it may tie to a question, is that the owl surveyors that I talk to, that survey here in the timber, tell me that saw-whets are by far the most abundant owl they hear when they're doing their surveys, to the point where they get kind of tired of hearing them, because, as you know, they tend not to shut up. Yeah. So I think that's pretty strong evidence that they're nesting here and there's quite a lot of them. Right.
Yeah. So that's the owl surveys. That's what I was referring to. There are people that are studying them, but not specifically where are these owls. And she was trying to do some color banding on the legs to see. That's what she's looking into, just to see if it's the same owl, so she doesn't have to recapture them. So, well, excellent. Thank you for coming, and hope you enjoyed yourself. Good. I see some hands, and if you have any questions, or you want to make the trip to Chico in the fall and participate in the banding, just look me up and send an email, and maybe we can make that happen. So thank you, and have a good evening.
I see one more question showed up on chat, if you want to take it. The question is, in the northern part of their range, do they all migrate?
In the northern part of the range, yeah, they are moving. That if you look at that one picture early of all the red dots, that's kind of they're on the east coast. They kind of are moving. They're migrating. They're breeding in the boreal areas, and And even boreal owls and northern saw-whets are breeding in the same area, and they are moving south. So yeah, they do migrate. Yeah, I think, I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking that there is some movement even in your owls, the coastal owls that you guys have. They're not stationary like a screech owl would be. There is some moving, but I don't know for sure. So someone needs to study them.
Yeah, I
So
think, yeah.
maybe when I retire, I'll move there and we'll study owls there.
You have them in the wintertime in your woods?
Yeah, we do have residents, or yeah, we have wintering, we're not residents, we have wintering owls. So we
Yeah,
do
we do.
capture, yeah, we do when we do some banding in the winter and some banding in the spring. But we do have a few that just hang out in the reserve all winter. So they'll come down, they'll feed in the winter, and then they'll move on in the spring.
Mhm. A lot to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Wonderful
evening.
presentation.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.